Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our weekly Watch Party Wednesdays. I'm Lee Gordon, coming to you live from Chicago, home of Brunswick, where we are thrilled again to welcome in all of our incredible Freedom Boat Club owners and members from all around the world. And tonight, we are thrilled to present the very well-known, the Bassmaster, Brian Latimer, as we launch our all-new Freedom Family Fishing Series dedicated to empower and educate all of our Freedom Family members to go fishing, to go comforting, and the confidence on the water this summer, and of course, surrounding you with those you love the most. Brian, thank you for joining us here this Wednesday.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate you guys having me out today.
No problem. So let's start with music, and we'll get to fishing in just a moment, but a little bit of an icebreaker. As you know, we recently launched our whole new series of Taste of Freedom tunes on our Spotify. What's your #1 song when you get out on the water? And I know when you're tournament fishing, you got to concentrate, so you can't have the music. You don't want to scare the fish away. But when you're going with your kids or with your family, you know, what's included on your own Bassmaster Brian Freedom Family Fishing playlist on Spotify?
It's definitely going to be a John Mayer hit. That's definitely going to be #1 on anything I listen to first. That's just my jam.
What's your favorite song? What's your favorite John Mayer song?
What do you think my favorite one is? No Sunshine. No Sunshine. Old school. The one he redid of Ray Charles. Yeah. Old school stuff. It's really good.
I like it. So we may have to ask you to sing in a little bit.
No, that's not in the deal. No singing in the deal.
So, Brian, I see behind you, you got your special fishing buddy and your son back there, and I know that your dad taught you fishing as well. Can you tell us just about how you got started in fishing and why it's so important to have that family lineage out on the water?
Yeah. So I started out, believe it or not, as a tournament fisherman, even as, like age of my kids. My dad was a tournament fisherman, so I actually grew up in the realm of tournament fishing. I didn't really grow up fishing with the cork and red worm or on the banks or ponds. And I kind of jumped all in from a very young age just because my dad was a tournament fisherman. So he exposed me to all of that really early on. So, my perspective on things is probably a little different. It wasn't until I was older that I got to do some of the more simple ways of fishing when I could actually drive and kind of do my own thing. But it's, I introduced my oldest son. He's fished a couple tournaments with me already this year, his first one this year. So it's been a lot of fun. Fishing is a good backdrop to have conversations with your kids, spend time with your kids. So it's really important. And so,
there's not a lot of people who get to do what they love and do it for a living. And when people put the word Bassmaster in front of your name, you've made it, certainly in your profession. What does it mean to you to be part of that exclusive club?
Yeah, it's a big deal. You think about it. First off, United States is the only place where you can be a tournament fisherman anyway. That's the only place in the world. If you want to pursue competitive fishing for a living, there's only one place in the world to do it. That's why you see people from Japan and Australia and so many people from different countries. They come here because it's the only place you can do it. But the thing about it is, even in the United States, there's probably less than 300 guys in the world that make 11 competitive fishing. So I'm super grateful to say that I can be a professional tournament fisherman. It is not an easy road to do. And of all the things that people do in the United States, there's a lot of football players, a lot of baseball players. There's a lot of everything, but there's really not a lot of tournament fishermen. And there's been a lot of guys come and go, so I feel real fortunate to be able to have done it. Not necessarily at a young age, but it didn't really take long for it to actually take place.
That's great. So I need some fatherly advice. We were talking about, I see your kids in the background. I've got a young son as well, and I've taken fishing a lot recently. We've not caught anything. His attention span is 0 when we're not catching anything. I've given him some worms. I've tried hot dogs. I've tried just anything to try to make it fun for him. But we're talking to Catchco about some of their different bait offerings, and I'm trying to integrate that. But I know you've got your Latimer's favorite hard bait collection. Can you fill us in and fill me in, really, on the importance of selecting the perfect bait and the type of hard bait you use from Catchco? Because I need as much help as I can, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners do too.
Yeah. So hard baits, hard baits are one of those I would consider hard baits to be one of those categories of lures. It's probably a little bit more of the advanced deal, especially if you're taking kids. You know, I usually start with soft plastics. That's where I started with my boys. But if they are interested in the hard baits, and for some kids, especially like my son, like catching fish is cool, but he doesn't really have to catch fish. He has fun picking out baits and using different things. Like he's happy with that. So, you know, for your kids, if they're short attention span, he just wants to tie on a bunch of lures and just let him do that. It's the biggest thing to do. But hard baits for me, things that I like to use that I recommend guys use that are fairly new to fishing. Crankbaits are great ones. Crankbaits I say mainly because the crankbait is you throw it out, you reel it back. It's really not any wrong way to fish them. So there's really two in particular that if you're starting off fishing that work really good. The Catchco Golden Boy is a good one to choose. Like if you've never fished before and you're just looking to tie something on, throw it out and catch fish. Catchco Golden Boy is a good one. It's one of the shallower diving crankbaits, so it's only going to get like in that 1 to 3 foot range is where it works best. It'll dive down to 4 or 5 foot deep, but that's really on a long cast. Typically with crankbaits, you're making shorter casts. So 1 to 3 foot is where it's going to really perform the best. But if you're fishing in a little deeper water, a little bit clearer water, typically if the water is clearer, you're going to fish a little bit deeper. So I like the shiver crank is probably my second favorite. It gets in that 4 to 6 foot range. It's a little bit deeper. So when you're fishing clear water, you can hit those rocks or the submerged timber or whatever it is that you're fishing. So those are the two that I like to start out with and that are probably best if you're unfamiliar with hard baits and just trying to get accustomed to fishing.
So when the world opens back up, you've just got 2 people coming to visit you. My son.
All right, that sounds good.
Yeah. That is, I need all of that and then some, for this. So, before we dive into your Freedom Family Fishing 101 special for our members, besides selecting the perfect rod, setting up your reel, the bait, of course, the perfect cast, all of which I need to learn. What does it take to really enjoy a great Freedom Family Fishing day out on the water for you?
The biggest thing, like for me, when I'm with the boys or with the family, is for me, being a competitive angler, it's kind of hard to turn that off sometimes. So I have to constantly remind myself, like, hey, I don't have to catch a fish today. Like, we can actually go out here and have fun. So, with my boys, they love to throw rocks in the water. They love to play and splash. So, if fishing's not that good, that's okay. Fishing can kind of just be the backdrop of a really good day. So, especially when you're out with your family or out with kids or whatever, like just let them play a little bit. Fishing is kind of hard. You are fishing for something that you're trying to capture, something that you can't even see most of the time. Like 98% of the time, we can't even see the fish that we're fishing for, right? So it's hard, and sometimes we set our expectations a little too high, especially when we're out with just to have fun. So use fishing as a backdrop to have conversations with your kids, to spend time with them. If that doesn't go well, just play, have fun, throw rocks, get a stick. My youngest kid, you can give him a stick on the bank and he'll splash it for hours and hours and hours. Never get bored. Just a stick. So just let your hair down, let the kids do whatever they want to do, and just enjoy the time on the boat, on the lake, on the bank, whatever the case may be.
That's great advice, and I'm telling you, we are coming to visit.
Sounds good.
For us.
I'll be looking for you.
That's right. Well, without further ado, please enjoy the launch of the all-new Freedom Family Fishing Series with Brian Latimer. And make sure to stay tuned for the very special Freedom Family Fishing Challenge, where we will be announcing to our members at the very end of this watch party tonight.
What's up, folks? I am Brian Latimer, and I'm here at the Freedom Boat Club, and I'm going to show you how to catch a bass today. I'm going to show you some of my favorite baits from Catchco to catch a bass this time of year. Let's get to it. I'm going to get out here, show you how to cast, how to set up your rod, and what baits you should be fishing with right now. All right, let's start talking about the rod first, because obviously if you don't have a rod, you can't go fishing anyway. For you guys that are beginners out there, What you probably want to start out with is what's called a spinning rod. There's basically two different style rods that you can use to bass fish with, or really any kind of fishing. You have bait casters, which are like this. Basically, you hit the spool. To get the spool to disengage, you hit the little button right here, and you've got to thumb it out when you cast it. You've got to place your thumb so the spool doesn't spin too fast, and you get a backlash like that. Call that a backlash, which is basically when the spool spins too fast and too much line comes off the reel, and it makes what we call a backlash. So you don't want that, right? So that becomes a little bit more complicated, and that's usually for more advanced fishermen. For you guys that are just starting off, let's just pretend that you've never fished before, you want to catch your first fish. The best thing for you to do is to go and get you what's called a spinning outfit. Spinning reel, spinning rod. How this guy works, you can see it's got, this is what we call the bail right here. You just flip it over like that and hold the line with your thumb or index finger, whichever one you choose to use, and then when you get ready to cast, you just let your fingers loose and the line will come out of the reel. So that's what you want to do with a spinning reel. That's going to be the best thing for you beginners. Anywhere between 6 foot and 7.5 foot on length on your rod. And then you want to use, for bass fishing, usually you're going to use a 2000 or 3000 series reel. This is a 3000 series, but you could get by just fine with a 2000 series. I wouldn't suggest that you get anything much smaller than a 2000 series reel when it comes to bass fishing. Let's talk about how we want to rig this thing up. So basically you get a spinning reel, brand new, fresh out of the pack. You're going to spool your line up on your reel. What do you do next? Well, you need to start putting your line through your eyes, and we're actually going to tie a bait on here. So what I'll do is I'll open my bail on my reel. Remember, the bail is just the thing that we flip open right here. Open that up, and then we'll start to run our line through our guides, starting at the reel, going all the way up to the tip. So I'll start right here at the bottom and just continue to put my line through the guides all the way to the tip. Take your time, make sure you don't miss any guides as you thread your line through the tips, through the guides. It's really important. What I'm basically going to show you guys how to rig up here. This is what's called a Ned rig. If you're new to fishing, a Ned rig is a really easy bait to fish. There's really no wrong way to retrieve it, and it'll catch just about anything. You know, for me, I'm always fishing for bass when I use this bait, but you can use it for just about anything. You can catch crappie on it, or you can catch pike on it if they have those where you live. It'll catch just about any different, you know, a bunch of different species of fish. And all it is a jig head and a plastic. I'm going to show you this, just a jig head with a small hook. Here it is right here. All right, that's just a 1/15 ounce jig head right there. And I'm just going to put a very small piece of plastic on this jig head. I'll show you how to rig it here. So here's my hook, and then here's my little small piece of plastic right there. And what I'm going to do is join these two together. This particular rig is called a Ned rig. And what I'll do is the small end, you can see one end is a little bit fatter than the other. That end is a little fatter than this end. The small end is where we're going to thread our hook through. So there's a couple ways, different ways to rig it. If you're a beginner, the easiest way to rig it is with an open hook, okay? I'll just rig the plastic right up on the hook and leave the hook exposed, just like that. So that's it in a nutshell. That's one way to rig the TRD right there, okay? Second way you can rig the same bait is you can rig it what's called Texas style. Texas style is where it's a little bit more complicated, a few more steps with it. Texas style, I'm going to rig the bait, the hook into the worm about 1/8 of an inch, and then my hook is going to come out. All right, so it'll look just like that. And then I'll continue to pull the hook, pull the soft plastic up and over the keeper, and then I'm just going to just barely tuck it into the plastic like that. The finished product looks like that. The reason I want to do this is it makes it a lot more weedless. So if I'm fishing around a lot of weeds or a lot of wood, or lay down, or if I'm getting hung up a lot, this won't hang up as bad. I won't break off as much. And it'll still allow me to catch a fish, because when a fish bites it, I set the hook and the hook pops through and catches the fish. So either way works. If you don't have a lot of hangs, a lot of wood structure or grass, the other way is just fine. This way will help you from getting hung up quite as much. After I've got my bait rigged on my plastic or on my jig head, second thing I want to do is tie it to my line. This is called a Palomar knot. This is how I'm going to connect it here. Run the line through the line tie once. Take that same line tag in and run it through the line tie again. So now basically you just have 2 strands of line going through the line tie. Second thing is, you're just going to make an overhand knot with the bunny ear side of your tag. So you can see the baits dangling on the 2 pieces of line. All I'm going to do is make a simple overhand knot with my tag in. Okay? Simple overhand knot. And it looks like that. When I got that tag in knot, what I like to do is just moisten my knot. The reason you moisten your line is so it doesn't get it makes it lubricates the line and it won't burn as you're cinching it down. Then what you do, it's a very simple step, is you bring the bait through the loop that you just made. Okay? And then I wet my line again and I cinch it down. Wetting that line is very important. That'll keep your line from burning and damaging the line, and it won't break on the hook set. After you do that, you just trim your tag in. And then that's it, right there. Now you've got your spinning outfit, you got a little Ned rig tied on, your jig head plastic. How you want to retrieve it, how you want to cast it, what you want to look for is what you need to know next. Now, what you're going to do, just how to cast a reel, remember, just take your bill, you're going to hold the line with your index finger. You need to, if that finger's not long enough, you can use your middle finger or whatever you need to use, but you need to hold the line, flip the bail over. All right, then you just, when you get ready to cast, just let that finger go off the line and your bait will eject off the rod tip. What I'm looking for when I'm casting this bait, little rocky points, drop offs, I'll cast it around docks, anything that's inconsistent in the water. When you're fishing, the only thing you want to look for is a change, where it goes from sand to rock, from rock to clay, where it goes from grass to no grass, or you have a dock post. Any kind of inconsistency is what you're looking for when you're looking to cast a Ned rig around. You're going to throw it out, let it hit the bottom. Most of the time you just want to fish this bait off the bottom, just little short hops, just like that. Short hops, let it settle back to the bottom. Short hops, let it settle back to the bottom. I like to demonstrate it by sound effects. My dad was always good about giving me sound effects so I could picture what my bait was doing like in the water. So I would throw it out, let it hit the bottom, and basically all you're doing is you're making that thing go boop boop, back to the bottom, boop boop, back to the bottom. That's exactly what the bait fish that fish feed on act like, and that's what you're trying to mimic. For you folks that are beginner fishermen, I'd highly suggest that you use a lot of soft plastics. When you go to the Shop Carl site, you're going to notice they have a lot of different soft plastic styles that you guys can use to catch fish. Typically, I like to use just simple soft plastics, ones that don't have a lot of appendages on it, and just a straight tail worm like this one. Usually I'll catch as many fish as you want in a lot of different water conditions all over the country, no matter what species of bass you have in your particular lake, pond, river, whatever the case may be. One of the ways that I'm going to show you to rig this plastic is called a Wacky Rig. Well, I know that sounds a little crazy, but I promise you it's a very simple way to rig, and it's very simple to fish as well. Wacky Rig is simply taking a straight tail worm like this one, taking your small hook, just hooking it right dead in the center like that. You're probably wondering, like, why would you ever hook a plastic worm in the center just like that? Well, for a couple of different reasons. This is going to affect the fall rate, or the way the bait sinks in the water column. Other thing is, it has a lot of action when you pull it from the center. It has like a backstroking motion, and it kind of does like this. Makes it really easy for fish to find, and is a very easy way to catch fish. This is called a Wacky Rig. I'm going to show you how to tie it up right here. After you've got your plastic hooked in the middle, just like I've got it here, just use a simple straight tail worm. Don't get fancy. Nothing really really fancy on here. Straight tail worm, no appendages on it. I'm going to use the same knot that I use in just about everything that I rig up. It's called a Palomar knot. I'll go through the line tie once, through the line tie again. And what I'm going to do, once I have both pieces of line going through the line tie just like that, I'm going to take the bunny ear side that I've got my middle finger in right here, and basically just going to make an overhand knot. So I'll make an overhand knot, and then I'm going to cinch that down to the line tie. The next step is to take this loop in that I have right here on your left, and I'm going to pull my bait through that loop. Once I have my bait through that loop, all I do now is moisten the line. That keeps the line from burning as you go to cinch it down, and it also lubricates it. Cinch that line down, and now you have a Palomar knot. Last step is to cut your tag in. When I cut my tag in, what I like to do is leave a little bit of the tag in just in case you didn't cinch your knot down. And that's it. Here's your standard Palomar knot, and that's what a Wacky Rig is going to look like once you finish tying it right there. How are you going to cast a Wacky Rig? The thing that I love about a Wacky Rig is if you have structure, that's great. If you've got docks, if you got wood, if you got rocks, that's great. The good thing about it, especially a lake like where I live, we don't have a lot of bank structure. So if you don't have anything at all on the bank, a Wacky Rig is a good place, a good bait to use to pick up those fish that are on nothing. Slick banks, banks that don't look like they would hold a fish at all. Just gonna cast it out. You cast your Wacky Rig out. It's not a bait that you have to fish on the bottom. It's great for catching suspended fish. So I'm just gonna throw it out. I'm just gonna shake the rod tip. Basically all I'm trying to do is make that worm look like it's doing a little backstroke motion. So I'll cast it out. Dark spots, little clumps of grass, lily pads, shade. It's always a good place to cast a Wacky Rig around and catch you a fish. So the second category of baits that Catchco offers for you guys to catch fish on is called crankbaits or hard baits. And I'm going to show you some of my favorite hard baits to catch fish on right here on my home lake. Now, I love crankbaits. The reason I love crankbaits is they imitate a shad, exactly what the fish are feeding on, very easily or very well. The other thing is they're super easy to fish. With the crankbait, it's a simple throw it out and wind it back. It's really hard to do anything wrong with it. You can see that I have one that'll dive a little bit deeper than the other. This particular one right here has a smaller bill on it, so it's not going to go quite as deep as this one, the larger one with the large bill on it. This is called the Catchco Shiver Crank right here. This one's called the Baby Boy. Now, what I like to do is tie these guys on a bait caster preferably. Still can use these on spinning equipment if you're not familiar with bait casting equipment, but I prefer to throw them on bait casting equipment. So what I'll do, I'm using 10 to 12 pound test line. On my spinning gear, I was using 8 to 10 pound test, but on this one, I'm using 10 to 12 for my crankbaits. And I'm gonna use the same knot that I used when I was tying on the soft plastic lure. So I'll go in with my Palomar knot, run the line through the line tie once, then I'll run it through the line tie twice, make my simple overhand knot. I'll moisten the knot, pull the bait through the loop, and then cinch it down. I like to cinch it down really slowly. Don't be in a rush to make it go down really fast. Cinch it down really slowly. Then I'll take my cutters, line cutters, and snap the tag in. Don't be afraid to leave a little bit of a tag in on there, because you never know when that knot may cinch down a little tighter, especially if you get a big fish on. So don't be scared to lock it down and leave a little bit of a tag in on. Now with the crankbait, my rod setup is a little different. Bait casting equipment, 6.5 to 7 foot long. I like a rod that has a little bit of action in it, a little bit of tip, kind of soft, and 10 to 12 pound test line. Very easy to work this bait. Let me stand up and show you exactly what I like to fish it around and how you need to retrieve it. All right, so with my crankbait, Very easy to use. What I'm looking for most of the time when I'm fishing a crankbait is rocks or bottom transitions. Anywhere the bottom is a little different. I really like riprap. So if you fish around bridges, the riprap that's connected to the bridge openings, those are always a good place to throw a crankbait. Anytime you got any kind of submerged grass or anything like that, that's also a good time to throw a crankbait. You can be erratic with a crankbait. There's no wrong way to work it as long as you're bringing it back to the boat and it's diving. Cast it out to your structure, whatever you're casting around, docks, laydowns, points, rocks, whatever the case may be, you're gonna cast it out and just slowly retrieve it back to the boat. Feel free to give it a little bit of action by kind of giving the few quick pops to the rod tip. But the main thing about it is don't rush the bait. Throw it out and just a slow, steady retrieve can sometimes be the trick to getting a bite. And always remember, you want to be running your crankbait into whatever the structure it is. So if I'm fishing in 2 to 3 foot, this baby boy like what I have tied on is going to be the guy to catch fish with. But if I'm fishing in a lot deeper water, 8, 10, 12, 15 foot, the shiver crank is going to be a lot better. The shiver crank gets to around that 6 to 8 foot range. It's going to be a lot better crankbait. So always pair your crankbaits up with the depth of the water that you're fishing. You'll notice on my crankbait colors, I'm staying with shad patterns. Colors really matter when it comes to fishing. So always try to use something that matches whatever the fish are feeding on. In most bodies of water, fish are feeding on small fish like shad, threadfin shad, alewives, or something like that. So always try to have a shad pattern when you're using a crankbait. That's a good place to start. Now I'm going to show you how to actually cast a bait caster. It's a little different than using a spinning reel. To get the spool to disengage to let line out, all I'm going to do is put my thumb right there on the bar bill right there. And it's going to open that bill. Just pressing that button right there. Now what I want to do is when I go to make a cast, I've got to make sure that my thumb rests on that spool so the spool doesn't spin too fast and create a lot of problems. Just rear back, make a cast, let that thumb just kind of feather on the spool, keep it from spinning too fast and creating a backlash, and I'll get a smooth cast every time. It takes a little practice, it's a little bit more difficult than the spinning rod, but if you're up to the challenge, a bait cast can be a lot more efficient way to catch a bass.
Well, Brian, I can't thank you enough for joining us on our weekly Watch Party Wednesday. We are so excited to launch our first Freedom Family Fishing Challenge of the season. So members, between now and August 5th, so just 2 weeks away, whichever Freedom Fishing family catches the largest fish, you'll win a full year annual subscription to Catch Go's famous mystery tackle box. To participate, it's easy. Just post a photo of your fish and how big it is by inches, and we will announce our grand prize winner on our Watch Party Wednesday, August the 5th. Thanks again for keeping it real with our Freedom Family Fishing series, and make sure to join us next week for our exclusive Club Spotlight, Freedom Boat Club Chicago, right here in my backyard, and a special christening experience of their new summer fleet. Thanks again for joining us this evening, and remember to tune in every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time for our Freedom Social Watch Party Wednesdays.